I don't do white boxes. I can't. Blank white boxes make me fall asleep. Literally by 2 p.m, I'll be dozing, hoping you haven't noticed I've fallen asleep. This way of working, it just doesn't work for me, which is why 6 weeks into my first corporate job, I quit. I've worked in more colourful offices since, and while I managed to stay awake in those, I knew I needed to get outside often to stretch my legs and get some fresh air. So for the next 6 years after university, I spent my time figuring out who I am, what makes me tick, and how I want to live my life. Today, by all traditional accounts of success, I'm a failure. I am not in a position to get a mortgage, even though I'm just nearly 30. I don't have a big salary, and I don't have the latest must-have shoes. But what I do have is the freedom to choose how I spend my time. And that's more important to me than anything. So yeah, spending time is more important to me than anything. And of all the things I do with my time, spending it with people who help me to see life differently and challenge me to think bigger is really, really important. Last year, I met this crazy ginger man, Dave Cornthwaite. He's an adventurer, and he's created a group of people called the Yes Tribe. And they support each other to go on adventures and to live life on their own terms. We meet up throughout the year to go and meet each other and sleep out in the woods with a bunch of strangers. We share stories over a pint in the pub. And a couple of weeks ago, we got back from our second Gestival, where we had over 40 speakers from all over the world sharing stories of adventure and inspiring us to look at life differently. Since meeting Dave last year, he's inspired me to go on a couple of adventures. Last year, I attempted to cycle home for Christmas from London to Newmarket, although I didn't quite make it all the way. This year, I completed a triathlon along the River Cam, and just 3 weeks ago, I got back from cycling Land's End to John O'Groats, 1,000 miles up the length of the country. And of all the things I do with my time, definitely meeting people is up there. I've been approaching life a little bit differently over the last 6 years. I now have a sense of ambition grounded in what matters to me most. I can honestly say I love my life. I'm a coach for entrepreneurs, and I get people to help them build a life and business that works for them. I love it. I work with people who are just out of corporate, and they're at the idea stage of their business. But I also work with people who are a couple years in, and they're ready to take their business to the next level. Of all the people I speak to, time and time again, it comes through that building a life you love comes down to having confidence in your ability to live life how you choose to. You might not have all the answers, but really knowing who you are is key to start with. If you can then build on that and add a group of people who support you and your crazy ideas, your life will be so much richer for it. But don't get me wrong, this is not an easy thing to do. Society has drilled into us an expectation of how we work and live. I know from my very brief days in corporate that things like working really late into the night every night, they just don't work for me. They don't make me productive. I need my sleep and I need fresh air. They're non-negotiable if you want me to do my best work. And while knowing how I work best helps me run my business day to day, it's not the full picture. After I left my corporate job, I set up my first business. And in 2014, I'd been working on it for 4 years. It was a good idea, but it just wasn't working for me. I wasn't making any money, and I wasn't happy. So I took the really tough decision to close the business. And this was hard for me. I'd left corporate to strike out on my own, and it hadn't worked. But looking back, I can now see why it didn't work. What I did was I looked for a gap in the market, and I did what I thought I was supposed to do when you set up a business, rather than looking at how do I want to live my life, and what do I want from the business? I needed to think about how I could develop an approach to life that allowed me to see the future differently and imagine how that could be. But I'm definitely not telling you to find your passion. Everybody tells you to quit your job, go and find your passion and follow your dreams. But I think that's quite a lot of pressure. What if you choose the wrong passion? What if you don't know what your passion is? It's kind of a hard place to start. So I think forget your passion, forget trying to follow your dreams. Instead, just go with the flow. I could never have planned to be standing on a TEDx stage 2 years ago. That's just not how life works. So instead of planning, I began to get curious. And I followed that to see where it led. And through that curiosity and following it, I realized, obviously, that I don't need a plan and that I don't need a passion. All I need is to explore. And so with that, I figured, well, camping. I mean, previously, I was never really much of a camper. When I was younger, I went camping on the Isle of Wight with a friend of mine from school with her parents. And we were at a summer camp. We'd been there for 2.5 weeks in the same tent in the same place. And it had become infested with black beetles and earwigs. I remember sitting there up in the middle of the night, unable to sleep, and I just saw this black beetle run across the top of her sleeping bag towards her open mouth as she slept. And you'd think that'd be enough to put me off for life. But in 2014, I heard Alistair Humphreys speak about micro-adventures. Just one night under the stars. This time, no tent. Well, I thought, maybe I could do that. I won't be there long enough for the bugs to find me. So it might be fun. So a couple of friends and I jumped on a train out of London, and we went to find a hill to sleep on. Admittedly, it won't be the best night's sleep you'll ever have. But when you wake up in the night and you look up to see a starlit sky stretch out above you, and come morning you wake to feel the sun on your cheek and you see the most beautiful sunrise, you'll be hooked. So now that I'd overcome my fear of sleeping outside, what else could I do? After I'd closed my first business, I then had this opportunity about 6 months later to take over a veg box scheme. This was a great opportunity for me. It was really exciting, but it was also a little bit of a challenge. I'd never done anything like this before, and this particular business relied on a sales skill set that I'd never been comfortable with. Plus, it had tight margins. I had no idea if I could make it work financially, or even if I could pay myself a salary to pay the rent. So I gave it a go. I tried. And when I found myself stuck in an office in front of my computer, I knew that I needed to start getting outside again to get some fresh air. So what I decided to do was to go on an adventure. This was my first adventure. I went source to sea along the Cam, which goes through Cambridge. And I did it 3 times. So I did it once by foot, once by bicycle, and once by stand-up paddleboard. And this was a really good challenge for me. It's something that I'd never done before, but I figured if I could do this, if I could get to the end of this challenge, then maybe it'd be a lot easier to get to the end or to push forward with my business. So I had a go. But when I start a big challenge like this, it's sometimes a little bit scary. It's a bit frightening. And I remember being at the source of the river. My friend Nicola had just dropped me off, and there I was, stood next to this little stream. And I was like, what on earth am I doing? Like, this is a crazy idea. Whose stupid idea was this? I'd never walked more than an hour or 2 before, let alone for 4 days completely on my own. But it's funny. Adventure teaches you something about yourself. It gives you the opportunity to just try and see how far you can get. So I figured, now I've completed this, maybe I should do something a little bit bigger. So just 3 weeks ago, I got back from cycling the length of the country, 1,000 miles from Land's End to John O'Groats. About 4 weeks ago, I just left Pitlochry in Scotland to travel 87 miles north to Inverness. It's going to be the longest day yet. I knew I had to travel National Cycle Route 7 to get there, but there was a particular point where I had to go off and go along a B road in order to get there before sunset. I was feeling pretty good. I'd been buoyed by a good day in the saddle the day before, but this particular day, it was raining. Like literally from the moment I woke up to sunset that evening, non-stop rain. About 4 hours in, and I was absolutely soaked to the bone and frozen. I wasn't entirely sure where I was, and I thought I was at this particular B road. Turns out I wasn't. In the Cairngorms in Scotland, they don't have 3G, so when you've cycled off the edge of your paper map and you're not sure where you are, you can't turn to Google Maps for help. So I was on the wrong road, and I knew that in order to get back to the other road, I had to go up this super steep, almost 1 in 4 climb of what felt like a mountain. And then I got to the other side, and it was still raining, and I was absolutely frozen. My fingers had gone beyond numb to the point of being painful, simply holding onto the handlebars. But I knew that I had to keep going. I had a bike that worked, and my body was still fully capable of cycling. So I kept going. And it had been so long since I'd seen anyone. I saw this corner in the valley in the distance, and I figured, surely there must be somebody around this corner who can help me. A cafe or just some sign of life. It had been so long since I'd seen anyone. So I got to this corner. And as I turned the corner around the bend and the valley stretched out before me, its stark, empty wilderness dashed all hopes of a coffee or a helping hand. It's in moments like this where you're at your limits and you're all alone, and all you want to do is just stand there and cry your eyes out. This is where you find your strength to keep going until you can find a way forward. In this case, until I found a B&B owner who could give me a lift to the nearest station, some 30 miles away. But it's funny, no one really cares if you cycle a particular route or if you take a day off because it's raining. It's safe. Failure really doesn't matter or even really exist on an adventure. It's your adventure. You can do it however you want to. Just as life, you can live it however you want to too. So it's a good thing. Adventure teaches you something. And also when you're terrified or feeling really stupid throughout the journey, whether that's in life or adventure, it's important to realize that actually that's just a part of the story. And when you've got a few miles in and you're making progress and you've broken out the jelly babies, that actually it's kind of okay. You're having a pretty good time, particularly when it's beautiful sunshine and you've got the countryside spread out ahead of you while everybody else is stuck in a blank white office. Being on an adventure also gives you plenty of time to think. It's great when every day you just get up and all you have to do is get on your bike and just keep cycling. There's no emails to check, no meetings to get to, no emergencies that can spring up. It's just simple. It gives you time and space to dream of how your life could evolve differently and how your businesses could evolve differently if you're running one. For me, when I was on my adventure, I came up with this new idea for an action-focused coaching program that would help entrepreneurs take their business to the next level. And when I got back, just 2 weeks later, I'd fleshed out and launched my program. This adventure had renewed in me a faith in myself, and I could then apply that once I'd got back. Cycling is also a great way of meeting people. And it's really people that make an adventure, whether that's your close friends, colleagues, or crazy ginger men, of which there are many in the adventure world. People are what make life and adventure. During this particular adventure, I camped out a couple of nights along the way in my tent. I would find a pub, unload all my bike and struggle in with all my gear. And this would often pique the interest of the locals sat at the bar, and they would want to know how far I'd come, how far I was going, and when they saw my tent, where I was going to stay that night. Which was lucky because then the landlord would often take pity on me and let me pitch my tent in the pub garden. But in this one particular pub in Somerset, the landlord on the left there, he gave me the keys to his pub just in case I needed to live a night. So some people are really amazing. When you let them help you, they will. So adventure is a great way of helping you build a life you love. Whether that's a small adventure or a bigger adventure, it's a great way to just get out there and to see life differently. Of all the things I've done in the last 6 years, I think the main thing that I've learned is that life's a choice. We can choose to follow the 9 to 5, or we can choose to make up some random adventure for ourselves and see where that goes. I've certainly learned that there's a lot of parallels between adventure and life, like helping you build confidence in your own abilities, or helping you to build a supportive team around yourself and dare to think differently. So I'd like to finish with a challenge. If you could be doing anything in the next 6 to 12 months, what would you love to be creating in your life? Start small. Maybe go and sleep out under the stars for a night, or find a little different approach that you can take in your work. And then build on that. Try something else new and do it again. You'll be amazed at how far you get. I can't promise that it will be quick, and there certainly is no plan on how to do it. But if you introduce a little bit of curiosity and action into your life, you'll be well on your way to creating a life you love, one adventure at a time. Thank you.